So far, I've shared with a lot of you what I find to be horrifying within the Persona series, and I've been very grateful that you guys have stuck with me for the ride. And thanks to the discussion surrounding all of these videos, I realized something. I am far from the only person that's been a bit rattled by this series. And that makes total sense. I am just one guy after all. So today we're going to be looking at some of your stories. Welcome to our first ever user-submitted episode of Horror in Persona.
Turn back now.
Vulgan says, I think an honorable mention of horror in Persona should go to the Okinawa chapter of Persona 5 Strikers. Everything starts out very fine and dandy, but as you progress through it, you realize there's a sense of something very off about the area, especially as you go to investigate the facility that's somehow been closed. Then, things truly go off the rails. After, you decide to try going to a hidden passage, as suddenly the whole population becomes hostile and begins to hunt you down for no reason. And once you finally get into the jail that Sophia finds in order to hide from the populace, you're thrust into a decrepit, decaying laboratory, devoid of life. There are no open areas or structure to the place, just a narrow labyrinth with no rhyme or reason to its layout. And as you piece together what happened, the truth of the jail's rotting existence becomes spine-chilling when you realize that it was the result of the death of its monarch. The place is likely just decaying and withered, no longer supported by whoever created it before. All that's left in this jail are a few types of shadows that roam inside it, a warden no longer bound to protect any sort of deep emotional trauma, and a grotesque, dire shadow. When first experiencing the Okinawa arc in Persona 5 Strikers, I remember how taken aback I was by the fact that this seemingly festive and fun arc took such a dark turn the moment Zenkichi consulted the party at the end of their little beach day. Something about seeing everyday people is way more disturbing than any confrontation with a monster or a normal shadow that you encounter, and I could basically chalk that up to two things. The first and most immediately obvious thing is that outside of the metaverse, the Phantom Thieves are just normal teens. The eerie reality is that without the augmentations their personas give them, they are very much susceptible to being captured, and even worse, as the villagers say, well, they intend to sacrifice them. With their desires being written over, they essentially are just zombies. Except these zombies aren't mindless, they have autonomy and they serve a cult. The second most scary fact here is that had Zenkichi not been there and shared his adult foresight, well, with the RV basically being a sitting duck on this island, these young people would have nowhere to go. After everything they've triumphed over in the past, they would have just died a grisly death at the hand of some villagers. I would also say that the laboratory easily has the most distinct atmosphere in the entire game. It serves as the icing on the cake with such a dark history, and it's quite literally all that's left of its deceased monarch. A monarch that, need I remind you, has passed away never to be seen or witnessed by anyone again. This even reaches to us, the player. We never see his face, and it's assumed that, even in-universe, he'll be lost to the annals of time.
Sharing the spotlight.
Master Seal says, Shadow Teddy might have been horrifying, but don't get me started on Mitsuo Kubo. His deadpan, lifeless expression, the fish eyes, his unsettling nature. You were to think Mitsuo was the true villain of Persona 4, until you realize that Adachi is the one responsible for the murders and the Shadow World's vicinity. Also, Mitsuo Kubo's shadow looks like a fetus, which is sealed inside an 8-bit knight. It makes him all the more scarier. Though as mentioned above, Mitsuo wasn't the real culprit, as the game presses on to the last couple of months. Isn't there just something so different about Mitsuo Kubo? Solely meant to be a red herring for the murderers, but conventionally he fits the bill on what a stereotypical societal outcast turned serial killer would look like to many of us at a glance. A person so twisted, even his shadow doesn't bother referring to himself as the true self because they may as well be interchangeable. He wears his twisted desires and delusions on his sleeve to the point where his shadow is all anyone sees. His awesome dungeon that's in the style of an old school video game turns from cool to horrifying when you really think about the fact that it takes this form because of his arrested development and delusions. It's truly scary. Not to mention his desperation for attention goes as far as to claim that he's responsible for multiple murders. That's stuff you see in real life. Copycat killers and false claims of admissions have been around forever. It's just rare that you would see any video game take a stab at this topic. You see, to bring it back a bit, The uncomfortable thing about Mitsuo is that he has this quality that I feel has only ever been captured again by Mishima in Persona 5, where he's written to be pathetic in this very sobering and real way, to the point where I think day to day, it's very likely that we pass by these guys, or maybe we even have to interact with some of them. We just don't know it. Something about Kubo just captures the essence of a human, a truly dark human. And compared to a lot of the more larger-than-life styled social links and party members, he's just this thing that exists, and you'll always have him in the back of your mind as that weird part of Persona 4.
Can you hear them?
Unknown user says, in the PS1 version you can hear baby cries in the hospital before the incident. Deva Yuga arranged version, Maki and Kandori were having a nihilistic conversation. I feel it's worth mentioning that the hospital sequence is the inciting incident for the very first Persona Awakening ever. We first lay witness to the aftermath of zombies claiming an elderly man's life shortly after visiting Maki, as she resides in the infamous room number 302. The intensity of the situation lingers far past what's essentially just the game's tutorial battle. The halls you innocently roamed to rather uplifting music is completely flipped on its head and replaced by a truly disturbing track. Muffled voices, unsettling piano keys, screams. Wait, on my way to the 3rd floor, didn't I hear a bunch of babies crying? And it all just leaves you to wonder, what kind of carnage is taking place outside of where we just can't see? Oftentimes what's left unknown could be most terrifying. I want this entry to emphasize one very important thing. Persona is now more popular than ever. It comes with some incredible benefits, but also some downsides. Persona 3 Reload is an amazing title, and it's definitely indicative that we're going to be seeing more and more remakes in the future. We already have 4 on the way. But with Persona seeing so much success, new things will define the franchise. And as a lot of people have noticed, Persona 3 Reload in particular is a bit more sterile than the original. A bit less scary when you hold them up side by side. Though I love the remake, I'll admit something was lost along the way. But I want to emphasize one thing. The first domino on the inciting incident of this very franchise has its roots in horror, and its first domino fell right here in Mikage Hospital. As a quick aside for the Deva Yuga track mentioned in this comment, you should totally check out my last video about Persona 1. I was actually so excited to talk about that topic that I couldn't really wait to put it into this video, and it just ended up being put out last week. So check out my video dedicated to Persona 1 called The Elements of Persona.